We've been touching obviously on marketing, the thing you control about yourself, the value that people perceive you will bring and the difference they perceive you will make to their organization, how you'll solve their problems. So the question becomes, how can I ensure that the thing that I most control, which is the marketing of myself, is complete? When I look at all the ways that an executive could and should be marketing themselves, the obvious places include LinkedIn. We hear about resumes. There's still a whisper here and there about the value of the cover letter. And of course, there's networking. I can think of those four off the top of my head. In no particular order, could you address, Saundra, how we make that one marketing effort? Because it could be a trouble area when those four or more things don't seem to be working in unison. If your story isn't consistent across those areas, and respectful of the channel, because how you communicate in the channel makes all the difference, suddenly that vision of yourself is fragmented. It's not consistent. It's not that powerful, unique statement that you want to deliver. So what can you as an executive do, and what should you be doing to ensure that you've got one solid statement out there so that when prospective employers encounter you, they're getting the real deal. They feel your vibe and the difference that you'll make.
That's a very good question. Again, we can take it right back to the marketing strategy. So if you're going to launch this product, you are going to have to know what the value proposition is, and then you have to communicate it. So what would marketing do? They would say, well, now we know who our customer is. Those customers usually get broken down into different segments. So like the marketing kids call it personas, okay? There's this type of an audience. So I'll give you an example. We've got Uber. So Uber has their drivers, and then they actually have their riders. So they have a value proposition, but that value proposition is going to take a different focus with different audiences. And the way that marketing does that to break these different audiences out into groups is to understand, well, what is that group doing for us? What is this particular audience? What do we need to do? What do we need them to do for us? Right. So what ExecuNet's done over 30 years is really broken down all the research, and it turns out everybody you need to communicate your value to is going to fit into one of three categories. One category is your resume reviewer. Now, your resume reviewer, let's get into that head, okay? They look at this document for a living, and the only thing they're doing for you is getting you seen by a human being. And by the way, this is the human being that sees your document, your resume, after the applicant tracking system already triggers it. So then it gets triggered, comes to them, they have to make the decision in 6.25 seconds. Do I pass on this? Do I put it for later? Do I spend 30 seconds looking at it? Do I shortlist it? Or do I just ping an email right now? We got to talk to this person. Go set this person up. Send this to the hiring manager, whatever it is. Okay. Second category is your interviewer. Now, this is a little later stage in the process, but it's a completely different conversation. So the third category is the network. Network is more on the front end of the process, because your network, 85% of professionals that make 200K and above are not going to get their next job through a job posting. I mean, we know that. That's actually been consistent for many years. They're actually going to get their job through network. So network, if you were the product and you had a marketing department and a sales department, picture your network. Everyone you know, everyone they know, and everyone those people know is 85% of your marketing department. 85% responsible for getting you in the right room with the right people. So how do you communicate that to your network? So all these people have different spins. So what we do is we dig into first that core value proposition, And then we talk about how that value proposition is going to get focused differently for different stakeholders. So for the resume reviewer, we know how scientifically how people skim documents with their eyeballs. So that's we have a particular format. We know how to control the narrative because that's what marketing does in all collateral. And then we take that core value proposition and take it over to the interviewer. Okay, now what does the interviewer need to see? Well, they're going to have a conversation with you in which they're going to make a decision on whether they're going to try and champion you or not champion you. If they do, great. But now they have to go create buy-in for you. And if they have to go create buy-in for you, odds are that can be anywhere between 1 to 3 months later. I mean, the average time from first interview to offer is an average time of 3 months. So you're not in the room or in the virtual room for 95% of that discussion. So your leave behind has to be able to have the talking points that allows them to bring them back to that interview. So that's why the leave behind's not the resume at the executive level. That's why we develop a value graphic for that. And then the third stakeholder is your network. Well, now that's both inbound and outbound, just like any other product. You have to go out there and have that conversation with people, reach out to people, both written and verbal, and then also have them find you. Now, oddly enough, when it comes to inconsistencies in that brand, the biggest inconsistencies that I see are the inconsistencies between what people have on their collateral and what they're saying verbally, both to their network and to their interviewer. I did a resume review with a woman, and I was preparing for the call the day before, and I read this resume, and it started out with a wonderful value proposition benefit statement. And I was like, wow, she's, got to be able to get it through the rest of the resume. But I'm like, wow, that was a great narrative controlling benefit statement. And then when I get on the phone, I asked her what her value proposition was. She was all over the place with experience and this, and I've done that, and I have persistence. And I'm like, what happened to X? And I read that, and she's like, oh, yeah, I guess. So the biggest inconsistencies we have to worry about are the conversations that you're having with your network, the conversations that you're having in the interview, keeping them consistent with the collateral that you're using to get into those interviews, to get through the interviews, and to get you found for the interviews.